Captain Ava Sinclair had always thrived in chaos, yet as she stared at the satellite monitors in the dimly lit operations room of Camp Albarrane, a cold knot of unease coiled in her stomach. She had deployed across the Middle East dozens of times, responding to crises, analyzing intelligence, and coordinating military operations. But something about this moment felt different. The diplomatic chatter between the United States and Iran had escalated to unprecedented levels. Threats were no longer veiled or subtle. They were sharp, public, and unavoidable. Ava's fingers hovered over the console, analyzing satellite imagery that displayed missile units moving with unusual precision along the Iranian coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. Normally, movements like this could signal exercises or drills, but the patterns were wrong. There were no accompanying communications, no scheduled exercises, and most alarmingly, the movements corresponded with the sudden disappearance of several radar signals from key military sites. Her instincts screamed something catastrophic was about to happen. "Captain Sinclair," her second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Reyes said, breaking her focus, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Ava didn't answer immediately. She studied the feed again, noting subtle signs of mobilization, artillery units shifting position, fuel trucks moving into launch-ready areas, and supply convoys heading toward strategic points. "We need to prepare," she said finally, her voice steady but tight with tension. "Alert all units. Ensure that defensive perimeters are ready. This isn't a drill." The room erupted into controlled motion. Soldiers hustled to their stations, radios crackling with instructions. Ava moved among them, issuing commands with precision, masking the anxiety she felt inside. She had seen war from a distance, analyzed conflicts from secure bases, but nothing could prepare her for the visceral fear that now pulsed through the desert night. Outside, the calm of the night was deceptive. Stars glittered over the Arabian Sea, reflecting off the tranquil waters. And yet, Ava knew that in hours, everything would be shattered. The base's perimeter lights blinked against the darkness, illuminating the soldiers as they checked equipment, loaded vehicles, and readied weapons. She walked along the line, offering calm nods and terse instructions, her eyes scanning for weaknesses, anything that could put her team at risk. Her thoughts briefly drifted to home, a small apartment in Virginia where her sister and parents would have been watching the evening news, completely unaware that she was about to enter a living nightmare. Ava clenched her fists. There was no time for longing or fear. Survival depended on clarity, action, and courage. The first sign of chaos arrived without warning. A distant rumble, low and ominous, rolled across the desert. Soldiers froze, listening. Then came the unmistakable whine of missiles cutting through the night sky. Ava's heart skipped. She had trained for scenarios like this countless times, but the reality was far more brutal than simulations. "Incoming!" someone shouted, panic threading through the cry. The base alarms blared, sirens slicing through the air as Ava barked orders. "Take cover! Deploy defensive shields! Activate the perimeter guns!" Explosions began in the distance, a staccato rhythm of death echoing across the sands. Dust and debris rose like a storm as the first missiles impacted, shaking the earth beneath her feet. Soldiers shouted, some frozen in fear, others moving with frantic precision. Ava ran toward the operations center, dodging falling debris and debris-lit corridors. The walls trembled with each blast, forcing her to steady herself against the concrete. Inside, the monitor showed chaos, radar systems flickering, communications jammed, and satellite feeds disrupted by electromagnetic pulses. Ava didn't have time to panic. She grabbed the nearest microphone, her voice cutting through the confusion. "All units, hold your positions and report status. Prioritize civilian evacuation routes. This is not a test." Her words were calm, almost surgical, but inside, adrenaline surged, a cocktail of fear and clarity sharpening her senses. Outside, explosions painted the sky orange and red, a fiery canvas of destruction that illuminated the desert for miles. Through the chaos, Ava noticed a group of junior soldiers pinned down near the supply depot. Without thinking, she sprinted across the open sand, dodging falling debris and incoming fire. Every step brought the roar of missiles and shrapnel closer, yet she pressed on, her training and instincts guiding her. Reaching the soldiers, she shouted, "Move with me! Follow my lead!" They scrambled to her side, running toward a safer bunker as explosions rattled the ground behind them. Her heart pounded in her chest, every breath a sharp reminder of mortality. She could feel the heat of nearby fires, the sharp scent of smoke filling her lungs, but she didn't falter. She couldn't falter, not now. Finally, they reached the reinforced bunker. Ava slammed the door shut and turned to assess the group. Several were injured, bleeding, shock evidence in their eyes. She knelt beside them, applying field dressings, issuing instructions with calm authority. "You're going to be okay. Stay with me. Help is on the way." Minutes felt like hours. The desert outside had transformed into a hellish battlefield, illuminated by fire, smoke, and falling debris. Ava's mind raced, analyzing every incoming threat, predicting movements, and coordinating defensive countermeasures. She was exhausted, terrified, and yet entirely alive in the adrenaline-fueled clarity that only true crisis could bring. Then a voice crackled through the radio. "Captain Sinclair, we've lost contact with the northern perimeter. They're under heavy fire." Ava's jaw tightened. Northern perimeter was where her most vulnerable units were stationed. Without hesitation, she mobilized a small response team. "We move out now. Keep low, stay in formation, and watch each other's backs. Let's go." As they moved across the war-torn base, debris showering around them, Ava caught sight of the first Iranian drones hovering in the night sky, their red lights like ominous eyes watching her every move. Her team fired back, the crack of rifles and the hum of automatic weapons blending with the roar of explosions. Each second was a fight for survival, a test of nerve, skill, and willpower. By the time the initial onslaught finally subsided, dawn broke over a scorched desert landscape. Fires smoldered in the distance, twisted metal and craters marking the devastation. Ava stood among her soldiers, bruised, covered in dust, but unbroken. She looked out at the horizon. The war had arrived in full force, and this was only the beginning. In that moment, she understood the truth. The nightmare was far from over. Survival would demand everything she had: courage, strategy, and heart. And Captain Ava Sinclair was ready to face it. The first night of the attack had ended, but the nightmare was far from over. As dawn broke over the desert, Captain Ava Sinclair surveyed the scorched perimeter of Camp Al-Bahrain. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crackle of burning debris and distant artillery fire. Her soldiers moved cautiously, checking on survivors and salvaging equipment. There were no cheers for surviving the night, only grim determination to prepare for what would come next. Within hours, the airwaves were filled with urgent communications. Intelligence confirmed what Ava had feared. The strike had been just the opening salvo. Iranian forces were mobilizing in full force. Missile batteries, fast attack crafts, and armored columns were advancing towards strategic points along the Gulf. Satellite imagery showed airfields, radar stations, and even civilian zones targeted for rapid escalation. The war had spread beyond the immediate battlefield. It was now regional, unpredictable, and relentless. Ava convened a war council with her remaining officers. Maps and digital overlays flickered across large screens, showing live troop movements. "They're not holding anything back," she said, voice low but firm. "Every unit we have is essential. We need to anticipate their moves, protect civilians, and hold our positions until reinforcements arrive." Lieutenant Marcus Reyes frowned. "Captain, their missiles are targeting more than just our military positions. We've got civilians in the city to the north who are trapped." Ava's jaw tightened. "Then we divide our efforts. Some of us stay here to defend the base. Others go to extract civilians. Everyone follows my command. There's no room for hesitation." By mid-morning, the first wave of counterattacks began. From the horizon, missile trails cut through the sky, white-hot streaks that threatened to turn the desert into a crucible. Ava's radar team worked frantically, calculating trajectories, relaying coordinates to the defense batteries. The deafening roar of interceptors clashing with incoming missiles filled the air. Sparks rained from the sky as some missiles exploded mid-flight, others striking their targets with brutal precision. Through the chaos, Ava coordinated evacuations. Convoys of armored personnel carriers and Hum-Ees raced along sand-swept roads, picking up families fleeing the line of fire. Mothers clutched infants, fathers gripped whatever weapons they could find, all trusting the small army of soldiers to guide them to safety. Ava ran alongside them, her uniform smeared with dust and blood, shouting instructions over the deafening explosions. The battlefield was no longer distant, it was immediate, visceral, and relentless. In the northern sector, a young soldier named Private Daniels froze as an explosion threw a cloud of debris over him. Ava saw him flinch and sprinted across the open sand, debris pelting her arms and legs. "Move! Move!" she shouted, grabbing him and pulling him into cover behind a crumpled vehicle. Smoke filled the air, burning her lungs, but she didn't let herself think about the pain. One soldier saved was worth 100 lost lives. By afternoon, the enemy had escalated further. Iranian drones swarmed overhead, dropping incendiary devices onto strategic targets. Ava ordered anti-air units to engage, coordinating with sniper teams and artillery to create kill zones. Each decision had to be precise. One mistake could cost dozens of lives. The attack reached the supply depot near the base. Explosions tore through fuel trucks and ammunition crates, sending fireballs into the sky. Soldiers ran in all directions, some wounded, others disoriented. Ava ducked behind a burning vehicle and assessed the chaos. She spotted Lieutenant Reyes pinned under a twisted metal beam. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward him, dodging incoming fire. Using every ounce of strength, she lifted the beam just enough for him to crawl free. Both of them scrambled to the nearest bunker, cuffing from smoke and grit. Hours melted into a harrowing blur. Ava moved from position to position, her mind sharp despite fatigue and the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Each decision was life or death. She watched as a missile struck the southern perimeter, obliterating vehicles and scattering debris across the sand. The explosion was massive, shaking the ground beneath her feet and sending soldiers tumbling. For a moment, she felt the raw fear of mortality, the creeping realization that no one, not her, not anyone, was safe. Amid the chaos, a radio crackled to life. "Captain Sinclair, this is HQ. Reinforcements are delayed. You must hold your position." The message was chilling. Ava knew that without immediate support, the survival of the base and the civilians depending on them rested entirely on her shoulders. Night fell again, but there was no peace. The desert was lit by fire, tracer rounds, and the distant glow of burning villages. Ava moved through the battlefield like a ghost, commanding, rescuing, and strategizing. She pulled wounded soldiers into makeshift triage areas, directed anti-air batteries to incoming drones, and coordinated evacuation convoys that had become targets themselves. At one point, she found herself facing a collapsed bridge where civilians had been trapped. Without thinking, she climbed over twisted steel beams and rubble, shouting instructions to terrified families below. Children cried, women clutched blankets, men tried to hold their composure. Ava's calm authority cut through panic like a knife. "Follow me now. Move quickly. Stay low." Minutes later, the group was safe, guided by her precision and courage. Yet Ava could not pause. The battlefield was ever-changing. Enemy units had surrounded part of the base, launching a coordinated assault to break defenses. Mortar fire pounded the perimeter, smoke and dust blinding vision, and soldiers scrambled to reinforce crumbling positions. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, Ava's leadership was unwavering. She climbed atop a damaged bunker to direct fire, her silhouette framed by the orange glow of flames and the darkening sky. Each command she issued was met with immediate action, each strategy executed with precision. But inside, exhaustion gnawed at her, a reminder that she was human, vulnerable, and mortal. By dawn, the first full-scale assault had subsided. The base was battered, some sections destroyed, casualties mounting, but the core defenses held. Ava collapsed for a moment against a wall, surveying the devastation. Soldiers around her tended to the wounded, extinguishing fires and assessing damage. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, heavier than any weapon or missile ever could. Yet even as the first light of morning revealed the charred sands and twisted wreckage, Ava understood one unshakable truth. The war had only just begun. Every choice she made, every life she saved, every position she held would matter in the days to come. And as she looked at the faces of her soldiers, tired, bloodied, but alive, she knew that survival depended not just on skill or strength, but on courage, determination, and the refusal to surrender to fear. Captain Ava Sinclair had faced the storm's first wave, but beyond the horizon, flames still awaited, and the real test of survival, both for her and the world she swore to protect, was only beginning. Weeks had passed since the first strikes, and the war had become relentless. Captain Ava Sinclair moved like a shadow across the desert, her uniform smeared with dust, soot, and dried blood. The once organized base had been reduced to a maze of debris, shattered vehicles, and scorched earth. Each day was a fight for survival, and each night brought new threats from an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move. Ava's unit had been redeployed to a forward intelligence post near a frontline city in southern Iraq. From their observation tower, the terrain looked deceptively calm, a flat, seemingly empty stretch of desert with distant mountains on the horizon. But Ava knew better. The stillness was a trap. Enemy drones, artillery, and snipers could strike without warning. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every gust of wind could conceal movement. She patrolled the perimeter with Lieutenant Marcus Reyes, scanning the horizon for signs of activity. The men and women around her moved with tense efficiency, but fatigue was evident in their eyes. Sleep-deprived, malnourished, and haunted by the sounds of previous battles, morale teetered on the edge. Ava felt it herself. Exhaustion gnawed at her muscles, and the weight of command pressed relentlessly on her shoulders. Then the ambush hit. It was sudden, coordinated, and brutal. A volley of missiles streaked across the sky, followed by the staccato bursts of small arms fire from hidden positions in the surrounding dunes. The ground erupted around them, sending dirt and debris flying. Soldiers screamed, scrambling for cover. Ava instinctively dove into a trench, covering her team with a suppressive fire. The attack tore through the post like a storm. Mortars hit supply depots, igniting fuel and ammunition. Explosions shattered concrete walls and sent steel beams twisting into the air. Ava crawled through the chaos, adrenaline sharpening her senses. Every second was a test of reflexes and decision-making. Amid the destruction, she saw Private Daniels pinned under a fallen radar array. Without hesitation, Ava ran across the open area, dodging incoming fire and explosions. She reached him, lifting the metal just enough for him to crawl free. He gasped, coughing from smoke and dust, but she couldn't stop. The enemy was advancing. Ava's mind raced, calculating escape routes and defensive positions. She directed her team to create barricades from debris and vehicles, turning the ruins into improvised defensive positions. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed was a gamble against the relentless onslaught. Suddenly, a drone appeared overhead, its infrared sensors scanning for heat signatures. Ava's team opened fire with rifles and portable anti-drone systems. Sparks erupted as the drone's circuitry failed midair, crashing into a nearby sand dune. Ava allowed herself a brief moment of relief, then heard the unmistakable whine of incoming missiles. The missile strike was devastating. It hit the eastern perimeter, sending shockwaves through the ground. Ava was thrown across a shattered hallway, her leg pinned under rubble. Pain shot through her body, but she gritted her teeth and refused to scream. She could not afford to succumb to fear. Crawling through the debris, she reached Marcus, who had also been injured. "We move now," she said, voice steady despite the agony in her muscles. Using a combination of sheer strength and determination, Ava freed Marcus and dragged him to cover. Around them, the post was falling apart. Smoke and dust choked the air, and the sounds of battle were deafening. The screams of the injured, the roar of artillery, and the incessant drone of missiles overhead. Ava's team rallied, following her lead as she guided them to an underground bunker partially intact from the blast. Inside, the wounded were triaged. Ava worked alongside medics, applying field dressings, administering pain relief, and giving calm instructions to keep panic at bay. She treated a soldier with a shrapnel wound to the chest, another with a broken arm. Each action was meticulous, precise, and urgent. Every life saved was a victory, every loss a haunting reminder of the war's brutality. Night fell, bringing with it a tense, eerie silence. The desert seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating the next wave of attacks. Ava climbed to the top of the bunker, scanning the horizon. Fires from distant battles painted the sky in an ominous orange glow. The silhouettes of destroyed tanks and buildings formed a jagged skyline. She felt the weight and responsibility pressing down harder than ever. Lives, civilians, and the survival of her team rested entirely on her decisions. A sudden radio transmission broke the silence. "Captain Sinclair, the civilians you evacuated are under threat from incoming forces. They need immediate extraction." Ava's jaw tightened. There was no time for hesitation. She coordinated a rapid extraction team, assigning soldiers to provide cover while guiding the convoy through the most secure route possible. The journey was perilous. Snipers fired from hidden positions, and improvised explosive devices littered the route. Ava led from the front, her experience and intuition guiding each step. She crouched behind a destroyed wall, returning fire with deadly precision, giving the convoy moments to advance. Explosions shook the ground, sand and debris blinding vision, but her team trusted her implicitly. By dawn, they reached a safe zone, a small village on the outskirts of the combat zone. Families emerged from makeshift shelters, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. Ava ensured they received food, water, and medical attention. For a brief moment, the war felt distant, and she allowed herself a fleeting sense of relief. But she knew better. The enemy's presence was still near, and every second of respite was temporary. Ava returned to her team at the forward post, assessing defenses, repairing communications, and preparing for the inevitable next strike. Exhaustion clawed at her, but she pushed through, knowing that any lapse could mean death for her soldiers and the civilians depending on them. In the quiet moments between battles, Ava allowed herself to reflect. She thought of the families, the children, and countless lives disrupted by a conflict not of their making. She thought of the soldiers she had lost, their faces burned into her memory. And she realized something vital. Survival was not just about strategy or firepower. It was about courage, resilience, and the unyielding will to protect those who could not protect themselves. As the sun rose again over the desert, casting long shadows over the devastated landscape, Ava stood tall. Her uniform was tattered, her body bruised, but her spirit remained unbroken. The war had stripped away comfort, security, and certainty, leaving only raw survival. And yet, she would endure. Captain Ava Sinclair had survived the ambush. She had faced near death, loss, and chaos, and emerged stronger. But she knew the most harrowing challenges were yet to come, deeper into the conflict, where strategy, survival, and humanity would be tested to their limits. The air was heavy with smoke and silence. For weeks, Captain Ava Sinclair had moved through the ravaged deserts and ruined cities of southern Iraq and southern Iran, a lone force among the survivors of her unit. The battles had been relentless. Explosions, gunfire, and the constant threat of missiles were now memories etched into her every nerve. She bore the scars of the conflict, a twisted ankle from the ambush, burns along her arms, and a mind forever sharpened by fear and loss. Yet, even in the devastation, Ava refused to yield. The war had stripped everything away: comrades, structures, certainty, but not hope. She had seen civilians cowering in rubble-strewn streets, children with hollow, frightened eyes, families grieving in silence. Every life she saved, Every decision she made became a small act of defiance against the destruction surrounding her. By the 4th week of deployment, Ava and her small team reached a devastated city near the Euphrates River. Buildings were reduced to skeletal frames, smoke still rising from smoldering fires, and the streets littered with debris. She moved cautiously, scanning for threats while ensuring the civilians trapped in the ruins could escape safely. A small boy, no older than 10, emerged from the rubble clutching a tattered blanket. His eyes were wide with fear and disbelief. Ava crouched to meet his gaze. "You're safe now," she whispered, offering him water from her canteen. The boy hesitated, then slowly approached, trusting in the calm authority that had guided him through the chaos. In that moment, Ava understood why she fought. Not for glory, not for medals, but for the fragile, enduring humanity she could protect. Her team helped the civilians into a makeshift convoy of armored vehicles and trucks, guiding them through safer corridors, avoiding sniper fire and sporadic drone attacks. Each mile traveled was a gamble, each passing moment a victory. Along the way, Ava coordinated medical aid for the injured, applied field treatments to the wounded, and provided words of encouragement to terrified families. She had become more than a soldier, a protector, a guide, a symbol of hope amidst the nightmare. Despite their efforts, the war continued to rage in the distance. Missile strikes echoed through the desert valleys, artillery fire lit up the night, and skirmishes erupted unpredictably. Ava knew that survival was fleeting, a constant balance between strategy, luck, and sheer determination. Yet she refused to succumb to despair. Each life she saved strengthened her resolve. Each victory, however small, was a testament to endurance. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, Ava stood atop a hill overlooking the city. The devastation stretched as far as the eye could see: crumbled buildings, smoldering vehicles, and shattered streets. Yet in the distance, survivors were emerging from shelters, walking slowly toward safety. The sight filled her with a quiet, almost painful hope. Her radio crackled to life. "Captain Sinclair, this is HQ. Ceasefire negotiations are underway. Reinforcements will arrive shortly to stabilize the area." Relief washed over her, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the scars of war, physical and emotional, would endure long after the fighting ceased. Ava guided her team to coordinate with humanitarian units, distributing food, water, and medical supplies. They repaired communication lines, mapped safe zones, and established shelters for families who had nowhere else to turn. She moved tirelessly, often ignoring her own injuries, ensuring every decision minimized further loss of life. Amid these efforts, Ava reflected on the soldiers she had lost. Faces of comrades, frozen in moments of bravery and fear, appeared unbidden in her mind. She had witnessed sacrifice in its rawest form, and those memories became a part of her, driving her forward even when exhaustion threatened to overcome her. Every action she took honored their memory, every life saved a tribute to their courage. The ceasefire held, fragile but real. Ava returned to the base she had first defended, walking through the charred remnants with a mix of sorrow and determination. Soldiers who had survived greeted her with quiet nods, weary but alive. Civilians she had helped waved from safe zones, gratitude and relief in their eyes. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, the first in what felt like an eternity. Though the physical battles were ending, the war's emotional toll lingered. Ava visited the injured in field hospitals, listened to survivors recount the horrors they had endured, and offered comfort where she could. The stories were harrowing. Families torn apart, cities burned, and communities shattered. And yet, amidst the grief, there was resilience. People rebuilding, children learning to smile again, communities slowly finding strength in unity. Ava realized that the true war was not just against an enemy nation, but against despair itself. She understood that survival meant more than living through explosions and gunfire. It meant nurturing hope, rebuilding trust, and fostering the courage to continue when all seemed lost. Months later, Ava returned home to the United States, limping slightly from her injuries, carrying the weight of what she had endured. The welcome was quiet, respectful, and solemn. She avoided parades or fanfare, instead seeking to share the lessons she had learned, the cost of war, the fragility of life, and the enduring power of human courage. She visited schools, spoke in memorial halls, and participated in humanitarian initiatives, ensuring that the stories of her comrades and the civilians they saved were not forgotten. Her journey had been a crucible, shaping her into someone who understood that survival was only meaningful when paired with compassion, leadership, and action. In the end, Captain Ava Sinclair had survived her worst nightmare. The USA-Iran conflict had tested her body, mind, and spirit. She had faced explosions, ambushes, and near-death experiences countless times. Yet she emerged not just alive, but transformed. Her nightmare had forged her into a symbol of resilience and hope, a living reminder that even in the darkest moments of war, courage, humanity, and determination could endure. Standing on a quiet ridge overlooking her hometown months later, Ava watched the sunrise, painting the streets in golden light. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a smile. The war had taken much, but it had not taken her spirit. And as she turned to meet her family, friends, and fellow veterans, she carried a message stronger than any weapon, that survival was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a mission to rebuild, to protect, and to honor those who could not. Captain Ava Sinclair had faced death, chaos, and despair. She had fought like a warrior, survived like a hero, and now stood ready to face the world anew, a symbol of courage, endurance, and the unyielding human spirit.